This is the demonstration video for our project update so far, what we have for Codename Slate. If you don't know what Codename Slate is, it's basically a program that we're making on an Android tablet that's supposed to teach programming visually for children. And so what we have so far doesn't look like much at the moment, but basically what we've done is we've been able to create input and output nodes. So I'm going to put down a node. A node represents like a function or maybe like a system call. Now, in order for the splines, the lines to work, we need to put 3 nodes down. So I'll put an input node, an output node, and then I'll have to put another node down, so I'll put another output node down. And you'll notice it creates a spline. So what happened is the traveling node started moving right there. Now the traveling node represents like the CPU cycle, which you'll learn more about that when Aaron talks to you about how the actual graphics work. But so I'll just go ahead and put something in. So you can put any combination of numbers or letters in. And what this does is right now we only have one register on the back end. It's going to load it in the register. So when I press enter, it'll then read it and it'll output it. So what's actually happening there is it's asking the back end for the value of the register that's here, and then it's outputting it. So if I put some more input nodes down, another output node, so it'll ask me for input again. I can change the value of the register, and then it'll output for me. So here's also a play and pause button. So if I press that, it will allow me to put as many nodes down as I want, and then choose to play it and pause it at will. So that's pretty much what we have right now. We spent a lot of time learning how to move the screen around. That looks very simple, but it's actually something we had to build from the ground up in the front end. So at the moment things are going really fast with how things are coming together. My job personally is I'm working on the middleware. So we have a backend that contains all of the registers, the logic operations, things that check the validity of the code that I can send from the front end. I parse it, make sure it's working all right. He gives it back to me. I'm able to control whether or not the traveling node can begin moving again or not. So it's kind of like a safety net between the back end and the front end. At the moment, what I'm trying to work on now is right now, if you notice the text on the screen, which is kind of popping up as an artifact, it would be nice if when we had an input node that it actually, instead of printing off on the screen like that, it could print off at the top here in like a system box. So I'm trying to dig into the system calls for Android to figure out how to do that. That way we don't have to actually paste to the screen and render it each time. But anyways, here's Zach. Zach is working on the back end, and he can tell you a little bit more about the back end and what he's working on right now.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm working on the back end portion of Codename Slate. In the back end, we separated the node classes from the graphical representation of the nodes in the front end. We did this because there's a lot of data that is not necessary in the back end for us to know. For example, we don't really need to know the position of the screen. We don't need to have access to the image files at all. And so we've kind of built from the ground up nodes in the back end that will store values and output information. So right now what we have is input nodes and output nodes. These are, and we have the framework set up for if nodes and loops and stuff like that. But the way this all works is they're connected to a common parent file or a parent class. So they can all be stored in a similar hash table, and they can be given ID values so they can be referenced later and they can talk to each other. And so yeah, right now a lot of the framework exists. We're only using a small portion of it at the moment because we are kind of working towards the graphical representation of all this functionality. So as we move forward with the graphics, a lot of the code exists and just needs to be called or referenced. Because of this, as we move forward, I'll probably switch over to making cleaner icons and buttons for the project in Adobe Photoshop. And I think we're also talking about creating an icon for the actual project itself when you see it in, like, on your home screen or something. And with that, we're going to take it over to Aaron, who's going to talk about graphics a little more.
I'm Cowdrey, and I'm here to talk to you about graphics. And when we first started, we realized that the graphics is probably going to be really difficult because, well, in the OpenGL environment, you have to do everything from scratch. You need to declare textures and rotations, buffers. You have to tell it which side to draw on. You have to do perspective calculations for just about everything. So I went ahead and made the back end, the back end graphics framework to where we could easily just say, hey, just create a new sprite. It'll do all the depth perspective calculations, all that for you. So after getting all that set up, we were able to say, okay, we can just create this button. It does everything for you, creates it flawlessly. We have every single button here, has everything done for you. And something else that I did is that I was able to make it to where it draws on two different planes, basically. It has perspective calculations for the buttons that are supposed to be mobile, and then on a different calculation, it does it in an orthographic layer where it draws everything that should be static. So in the draw frame of the program, it draws each group separately, the orthographic view and the frustum view. So I can move these around, and these don't move at all. These still stay in the same spots, along with the background, which is also static. And it's basically how I set up all the graphics.